How much equity should you have in your home before you sell it? All right, guys, this is a great question. How much equity should you have in your home before you sell it? It really depends on what your goals are, and we're gonna dive into this. But I appreciate the question. And by the way, if you've got a question you'd like to have me answer, all you've got to do is type it in the comments below. And so a question like this, I'll create a video for you and for everybody else on YouTube that can listen to it, including my subscribers. So it really depends on what you're talking about here. And part of the question didn't answer, is this as a homeowner or is this as an investor? Don't worry, I'm going to answer both questions here. So as a homeowner, let's start with that before we talk about an investor. As a homeowner, it really depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to sell a property to get out of debt, if you're trying to sell a property to lower your monthly payments, if you're trying to sell a property because you're relocating and have to move, then some of those things don't really matter how much equity you have. Equity can't be created in terms of just hoping you'll get more. Equity can be created by finishing a basement or making the property nice or some of those things. But really the house is going to sell for how much the market's willing to bear. You're going to have to find a willing buyer that's going to buy that property. And if a willing buyer isn't willing to pay what's owed on the property, you're not going to be able to sell that property. So how much equity you should have in your home before you sell it, if you're living in the property, really is going to be determined by your personal circumstances. And so if you have to relocate because of your job, you've got to sell your house, you might not make any money, but you've got to relocate that, right? So it's really personal on that. The other thing is, it comes down to the standard of living that you want. You may really love your house, and so you want to stay there, and you may disregard your house, and so if you don't have any equity, you'd say, I just want to get out and move somewhere else, and I'm okay with not making any money on the property. So I think that's really important, because the standard of living and what you want for your family and your lifestyle and those things could be worth more than money to you. And so that's why as a homeowner this question is really difficult, because the real answer is it depends, and it probably has a lot to do with other life factors, not necessarily as just an investment. But with that, let's start talking about the investment side, which, by the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, hit that thumbs up button and please consider subscribing. So let's talk about on the investor side. If you're an investor, the question is, how much equity should you have before you sell? Well, this is going to vary based upon if this is a rental type situation or if this is a situation where you're fix and flipping the property. If you're going to do a fix and flip on a property, I want to see you have at least 10% margin on that property after all fees and costs. Meaning, if the property is going to sell for $200,000, I want to make sure you're making at least $20,000. But with that, you have to take out the cost of the rehab. You've got to take out the cost of agent fees. You've got to take out the cost of title fees. You have to take out all the other costs associated with that. And then in the end, you want to make sure you're making at least a 10% of that gross sales price. Now, you probably want to make a little more than that, but that's kind of a minimum you should have in order for you to sell that property and make a profit. You're going to want to have at least a 10% profit margin with all those costs, which, by the way, we have a really cool software that our members use called the Advanced Deal Analysis that walks you through all this, because there's a lot of costs people don't think about, like with transfer fees, and you may be having utilities, especially in the winter time. So all those things can add up, and you just don't realize it. So that's something you've got to keep in mind and add those things in, which our advanced deal analysis helps out with that. That said, you want to make 10% on that. Now, let's say it's a rental property. With a rental property, the idea with this is if you own the property more than a year and a day, you could get long-term capital gains. And in most cases, long-term capital gains taxes is more favorable. So you'll pay less in taxes, so you may be okay with a lower profit margin if it's a long-term rental. But if that's the case, I would challenge you as to why are you really wanting to sell it? Because I think rental properties make a lot of sense when you've owned them for 20 years. They don't make a lot of sense when you own them for a few years. Most rental properties, you're going to be lucky if you cash flow or make $100 or $200 a month. And with that, each month your tenant is paying down your loan. So you've got the amortization, you typically have some tax write-offs, and over a long period of time you start to see some appreciation, and that's where it can kind of get serious. So to really answer this question about how much equity you should have in your home before you sell, if it's on that homeowner side, it's really personal, a lot of factors. If it's on the investor side, you want to have 10% net to you. If it's on a landlord type situation, I'd really say hang on to it if you at all can, and if you can't, you may just need to sell it for other reasons. So that's some of the things that you need to take into consideration. And specifically, the other thing, with this primary home, you got to just decide if that's where you like to live. If you can afford it and you like it, go for it. If you can't and you don't like it, it might make sense to make a change on that. Now, as we talk about all this stuff of how should I sell my home or how much equity I need or any of those things, something that's really helpful is what's called a property value analysis. And what that does is it allows you to understand what the value of your property is. And it's basically you're pulling some comparables, and you're pulling some actives, you're pulling some solds, and you're putting that into a worksheet to help you understand what the price of your house is probably worth. I have one of those. If you'd like to get a copy of that, text me at 435-294-0433. 435-294-0433. Text your email address. I'll put it in the description below. Just text your email and I'll send you over our property value analysis. I also have a blog you should check out on pro strategies to find a house with equity. You check out that blog, I'll link it below as well. And I have a video you're going to want to watch. How much will I profit from selling my home? Check out this video here as well. That said, if you need some help with anything, with some tools, some resources, some money, some software, finding properties, check us out over at dohardmoney.com. We'd love to talk to you. Otherwise, make it a very profitable day, and bye for now.